not just speaking about faith, not just having it, but living it. Not just a feeling, but action. And that's when that happened, I was like, this is home.
Most of you know Nikki Haley, the Indian-American political heavyweight, former governor of South Carolina and recent presidential candidate. But here is something you probably didn't expect. Her son, Nalin Haley, has taken a path that not only diverges from her politically, but leads in a completely different spiritual direction. In the first clip, Nalin talks about growing up in a multi-religious home surrounded by a mix of traditions, yet never quite satisfied with any of them. He devoured books on Hinduism, Christianity, Islam, atheism, you name it, searching, comparing, analyzing. And that hunger for truth eventually pushed him right toward the Catholic faith. Let's listen.
So I grew up with kind of two religions in my household. So I had my parents who were Protestant, and my grandparents have always lived with me growing up, my mom's parents.
Yes.
And they were Sikh. As a result, I was very confused.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens. And I just remember that as young as like third grade, when my friends would check out their books on dinosaurs and cars and all that stuff, I was reading on every single world religion and trying to absorb as much as I can, because I wanted to know if God exists, and if he does, who is he, right? So that's what I spent doing for years. And I would say...
Reading about world religions
yes,
instead of dinosaurs?
Yes, I was obsessed with it.
Unusual child. Yeah.
I was, yeah. Yeah.
No, it's
to
great.
put it that way. But, and then I would say like around like 7th grade, so like this is a few years of just researching this stuff obsessively, I was reluctant to speak about this publicly, but I figured if it blesses just one person, then I'll say it here. I had an experience where I was researching, and it was as if in an instant I heard, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And as if the knowledge, the truth of God was placed instantly after that was said in my mind and in my heart. And it's funny, after all these years, I've struggled to really put into words that experience and that feeling. But once that happened, I had always heard about the Holy Spirit, right? Everyone hears about it. But when that happened, I was like, oh, that's what that is, right? Like, because it was just some mythical thing,
Of course,
that I had read about. But then it happened, and I was just like, this is really interesting. And it'd be one thing to just write off as, oh, that's just some weird thing, weird experience, but it never left me. And the most interesting part, and the part that I kind of like the most, is it was none of my research on these world religions that got me to that answer. Not at all. It was I was very much a skeptic of Christianity prior to that, the second before that happened. It was an instant realization that was not of any of my own work. And what made it so beautiful was that not long after that, I was reading the gospel, and I found where Jesus said to Peter, then Simon, "Blessed are you, Simon, for flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven." I was like, that's what that was. And then I also read where he said, knock, and the door will be open to you. Seek, and you'll find. And it's just a beautiful thing when you realize that God is true to his word every single time. And it has never left me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's a massive realization he lands on. All that research, all that reading, all that comparing, none of it actually brought him to Jesus. What changed him was the personal encounter, that unmistakable sense of being met, known, and called by Christ. And that matters because it reminds us of something most of us conveniently forget. God doesn't limit himself to our intellect. He doesn't wait for us to solve the puzzle. He cuts straight through our mental frameworks and reaches the heart. Sometimes he uses books, sometimes people, sometimes a single disarming moment that hits you like a brick from heaven. Remember, God has 1,000 ways to move the human heart, and not one of them requires our permission, which is why we need to let go of that St. Thomas the Apostle instinct, that urge to demand proof on our terms. God comes to us on his terms, not ours. Now, with all that in place, in the next clip, Nalin talks about how the encounter didn't just nudge him toward Christianity in general, but carried him all the way into the Catholic Church. Let's listen.
You became Catholic.
Yeah, that's another thing. So there's another layer to it.
What happened
Wait,
there?
there's more. Yeah. So when I was Protestant, and when I was Protestant, obviously God is all you need, but I did feel some unexplained void in my faith. I didn't know what it was at the time. And I went to Villanova, which is a Catholic institution, and it's so ironic because my first time ever going to a Catholic Mass was the summer after I graduated from Villanova. So never went to Mass when I was at Villanova. I've never been to Mass before, but it was after I graduated from Villanova that I went to Mass for the first time. God doesn't write in straight lines, I guess. But,
No.
And I began to really think about my own faith, and I was like, I have this void that I can't explain. How can I be the best Christian I could be? How could I best serve God and serve others? That was the question that made me think about it. And I began to research, but really it wasn't about the research. It was that question, like, where can I be at my best? Where can I serve God and serve others? And when I did study Catholicism and I read the early church fathers and their history and all that stuff, I felt, you know what, this may be for me. And then when I started to partake in the sacraments, the Eucharist, confession, that's when I was like, oh, that's that void. That's when I felt like, okay, I feel fulfilled now. And now it's to the point where, like, if I can't go to Mass on Sunday, I feel empty. If I don't go to confession, I feel like heavy weight on my shoulders.
Yes.
And that's where I was like, this feels like not just speaking about faith, not just having it, but living it. Not just a feeling, but action. And that's when that happened, I was like, this is home.
And has it proven to be what you thought?
Absolutely. More than that. It's the best decision I've ever made in my life, second to becoming Christian in the first place. Although that wasn't really a decision, but kind of happened to me.
And he is right to highlight one of the core gaps in a lot of Protestant circles today. The way Christian living gets boiled down almost entirely to what happens inside. It's all about your personal relationship with God, you reading the Bible, you spending time alone, and just having faith in Jesus alone. All good things, but when they become the whole thing, you end up treating the body as irrelevant. Then worship becomes this purely interior, spiritualized activity. And once you drift too far that way, you're practically floating in midair like some disembodied angel. So then the question becomes, as Christians, can we truly worship only in spirit while practically ignoring the body? Let's hear what Bishop Barron has to say.
You know, the human beings are body and soul. And it's a kind of angelism that says, well, I can just do all this in my own mind or within my own will, within my own spirit, as though I'm not embodied. Because to say embodied means to say part of a community. To say embodied means I need things that appeal to my senses. I need to hear and to see and to touch, you know. Think of all the ways that Catholic sacraments and Catholic liturgy involves the body. Even an act of praying publicly and singing publicly, witnessing to your faith. All of that is a way of embodying what we believe. If you divorce church completely from, you know, faith or religion or spirituality, you're adopting a sort of weird angelism. Now, a lot of modern philosophy, trace it right back to Descartes, is angelistic in form. You know, if I say the real me is the, you know, the cogito, the real me is the thinking thing on the inside, or Immanuel Kant, you know, the real moral life happens in the purity of my own will. It doesn't have to do with the outside world. Those moves are deeply problematic. I would identify them as Gnostic moves, or the language I'm using now, they're angelistic. And there's some of that, a lot of that, I think, in this, you know, bracketing of church. Who needs it? You know, I can do it on my own. Yeah, maybe an angel can, but we're not angels.
This ties perfectly into what St. Thomas Aquinas teaches. Since man is made up of soul and body, he needs to be led by sensible things to things spiritual. He's not being poetic here, he's describing human nature because we are a unity of body and soul. God does not bypass our physicality, he works through it. God reaches the soul through what the body sees, hears, touches, and does. We grasp invisible realities through visible signs, which is why the sacraments exist. Our bodily gestures, kneeling, bowing, standing, making the sign of the cross, shape our inner life. And ordinary material things like water, oil, bread, and wine become vessels of grace. Which is why Aquinas reminds us that the physical world isn't a distraction from spirituality, it's the doorway into it. Saint Benedict grasped this intuitively centuries before Aquinas ever penned a line of the Summa. That's why his rule is drenched in physical prayer. His monks didn't sit around silently contemplating ideas, they prayed with their whole bodies. They stood, bowed, knelt, chanted the Psalms, and even prostrated flat on the floor at times. Their bodies trained their souls. Every moment cultivated humility, attention, and reverence. So in Benedict's vision, worship that excludes the body is incomplete because God designed us as a unity, not a floating spirit in a skin suit. So authentic worship demands the whole person, body and soul, action and intention, gesture and belief. I hope this video is helpful. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. God bless you.